Do you have a few minutes?
I gotta make some changes in my life. Do you even realize what your life means?
Morning Cup of Joe, a Missouri S&T podcast using pop culture to destigmatize mental health.
Fake laugh, hiding real pain.
Do not self-destruct.
I didn't ask for this to happen.
Join us in using everyday examples to explain usable techniques to help improve your mental well-being.
Stay a while and listen.
Welcome back, minors. My name is Amber Johnston, and I'm a counselor up in student well-being.
And my name is Tracy Kriegel, and I'm also a counselor in student well-being. And it's time for your Morning Cup of Joe.
So, Tracy, one of the things I remember the most about my college days was the gossip. So, my freshman year, I lived in the dorm. One of the most memorable experiences I had was by a person that was playing pranks on everyone on a floor. They called themselves the serial tapist.
Tapist? Like, are you meaning like Scotch tape? Like tape?
Yes. Tape.
Okay.
So what would happen is they would use tape, and they would make this giant wall of tape over the door of your room, like in the dorm. And so that when you open the door, you were just faced with this giant wall of tape. And it could be Scotch tape, duct tape, painter's tape. It was whatever tape they could find.
Just whatever tape was on hand.
Yeah, it was just tape. And there was a big note, like, stuck in the middle of it. And it said, "You've been hit by the serial tapist." And, like, it was a thing. And so it was kind of funny at first, and they started adding balloons and confetti. So you would open the door, and, like, your room would be flooded with balloons. Or, like, they would have it so that when you open the door, it would rip open confetti, and confetti would go everywhere.
Oh, my gosh. So maybe we should stop right here, and we should say, if you're listening to this podcast today, do not do that. Do not get any ideas for this. But this sounds like a lot of fun. But let me ask, what went wrong with this? Because if I'm hearing serial tapist, something does not sound right here.
Well, this is how this went bad.
Okay, please explain, because I gotta know.
At first, it was really funny. Everybody was laughing, and it was cute, and it was funny. Well, everybody was gossiping about everybody else. And so...
Bad story, I can tell.
This was going on in the background of, the whole tapist thing happening. So, you have gossip happening, and then the tapist thing happening at night. And,
I can hear you. Tell them everything.
Yeah, basically. So, there was this one particular girl who everybody was talking about.
It's always the one particular girl. There's always one girl.
Well, they were talking and saying nasty things about her because she was supposedly hooking up with too many guys. That kind of shaming thing people do. Yeah. Anyway, what was being said was super judgmental, really mean, really unkind. But basically, the tapist usually hit at night while we were all asleep. But on one particular instance, they didn't hit while we were all asleep. They hit when she had one of these individuals in her room who happened to be dating somebody on another floor.
Uh-oh.
So now she's stuck in the room with this girl from another floor's boyfriend, and they get taped in the room together. So when they open the door and the confetti flies, everything gets fronted out to everyone.
Yikes. Head shaking going on over here, going, ah.
So
bad.
the worst
terrible.
The worst part about being struck by the serial tapist was that you had, depending on the type of tape they use, like Scotch tape, you could generally punch through. But, some of the tape that they were using, it made it, because of the sheer amount, hard to get out of the room. Again, do not do this. Cause,
don't do this.
Yeah. This is really bad. It tore up walls and stuff.
Oh.
Yeah, like it was bad stuff.
Points for getting ejected from dormitories. Don't do that.
Yes, don't do this. This is a cautionary tale, not directions.
Correct.
So you had to ask for help. So now they're stuck in this room having to yell to get other people to get them out, which again got attention from everybody. And now, yeah.
Yada, yada, yada.
Everyone is out in the hallway because it's like the middle, it was late afternoon, early evening or so.
Everybody's wondering what's going on.
Yeah.
What's the ruckus? What's happening?
And then they get the wall down and bum, bum, bum. It's the girl that everybody's gossiping about
Pointing
with
the
the
fingers.
girl from downstairs boyfriend.
Yikes. That's
Yeah. So it was a lot of drama, and the couple ended up breaking up very publicly. Like within the next day, the next day, somewhere like pretty close. Like it's been 20 years. Like I don't remember exactly, but it was somewhere around then. They ended up breaking up. Like big spectacle. Everybody, of course, is talking about that too, and then no one knew what those two people were actually doing. They could have been studying.
well, yeah.
We have no idea what they were doing, but because of everything that was happening, because of everybody talking, it ended up breaking up this relationship and ending up like being a huge ordeal.
So,
And both of them denied that they were doing anything wrong.
yeah, it sounds terrible on everybody's part for her, him, and the girlfriend that's not even there, but she's in the situation. She was drawn in the situation.
Yeah.
So many emotions.
Well, because you've got everybody in there, like what choice really did she have other than breaking up? Because now
Right.
everybody is like saying that he's like cheating on her with this
Yeah.
with this girl, and we like really don't know that. Like they
Yeah.
could have totally been studying or doing whatever.
There's
Like,
no ability to have rational thinking in that situation. There's like so much talking and so many. That's awful.
So this is what I wanted to talk about today, was gossip, bullying, and other than my personal example that I gave from my college days, I wanted to talk about the TV show, The Bridgerton.
Bridgerton. So, interesting. So if you're not familiar with the show, we're going to take something away from this episode. You'll be able to we're going to talk about the characters and the motivations, and we'll steer away from some of the spoilers. Although for the topic, there will be some minor spoilers.
So Bridgerton is a drama series set in Regency, England, which is the early 19th century. And it surrounds a wealthy aristocratic family called the Bridgertons and their various romantic entanglements in marriage. Now, I think this is hilarious because Regency novels, especially in the romance genre, are like super popular. But it was like apparently like only 9 years. So if you think about all of the dukes and the duchess, and like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you put all the, like, how in the world, like, all of those people could not have existed at the same time. Just, it dumbfounds me. Like, because I don't know, like, weird things Amber has pondered is like all of the aristocratic, like the made up aristocratic families in these novels like this.
Right.
Like, it's insane. Like way more people than there actually could have ever existed. Anyway.
I love the architecture of the buildings. I love to go tour places like
Yeah.
this. So the narrator is Lady Whistledown, who's an author who publishes pamphlets that detail the scandals and the gossip happening in the town. And of course, everyone, including the Queen, reads it. Of course, you've got to read it. But being in the pamphlet is, of course, very bad for anyone unlucky enough to be included.
Right, but here's the counterpoint of that. Not only is it bad to be included in it, nobody wants to be included in it themselves, but they all want to read what Lady Whistledown has to say about everyone else.
You got to be a part of the gossip.
Yes, that's the
And don't want to be excluded, probably, either.
the on D,
On
as
D.
they call it, the on D. Gotta be part of it. So let's start off with, why do we gossip? Gossip is essentially a form of social bonding. It encourages adherence to social norms, and it makes us feel connected to others. Sometimes we do so as a way to lift ourselves up by bringing other people down. So I don't feel as bad about my life if I'm talking bad about somebody else's life. Sometimes we do it as a way to cement our place in the social order and feel more powerful. And sometimes we simply do it as a form of entertainment. Like, I mean, let's be honest, Regency England, there was not a whole lot of otherwise entertainment going on other than them going, like, especially for the aristocratic, like, gentry, they were going around and they had parties and they stayed up all night at these parties and then they talked about each other and what happened at these parties the next day.
Getting attention and acceptance from others.
Yes. So I think one of the best examples of this is in season 3. On one night on the way to a ball, 2 of the Bridgerton siblings, Colleen and Eloise, are talking, and Colin reveals that he is helping a family friend, Penelope, find a husband because she's having a hard time finding a husband. So
nobody wants to be alone.
Well, and it's social ruin,
Right.
basically, at that point. Like, she's in her 3rd season, and so basically if you don't find a husband by the end of, like, you start to be considering what they call a spinster or blue stocking. I don't know why they say blue stocking. Like, that doesn't make sense.
It's an interesting term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, there's a whole language to these Regency novels if you read them. Like, the whole thing. Anyway.
Comprehending all that, it's like, ugh.
Yeah. And so Eloise talks to another friend about it. So she reveals it. And then, of course, that information is overheard by other people. And then they start talking about it. And it makes its way around the entire party.
Telephone just happened.
Yes.
Played that game.
Before the evening is, like, within just, like, a short period of time. So you've got, like, everyone is talking about it. And now the people that are there are making snide comments to Penelope about this instance, that she has got to have this guy help her find a husband. So, and then Colin's getting teased about it because, he's doing this thing for Penelope.
So he's trying to be helpful, but then everybody else is making fun of him because, oh, look who's helping Penelope.
Yeah. And Penelope she is not considered, like, she's kind of looked down upon, a little social outcast. She's like a wallflower, which is, like, how she's able to do that through, like how she's functions in society.
Right.
She's just this, like, wallflower. But,
Yeah. So, information might have been relayed was true. It sounds like the sharing of the information was cruel. It's just so, the way you were describing it, to me, it just sounds awful.
well,
And
it
it's
was
cruel, and it's just that mocking of the whole situation.
And how much is that like the story of the girl in my dorm? There was no positive reason for that information to be shared.
No.
Nobody was looking for the truth in that. They were looking for the illusion that they had created with their gossip.
Right, exactly. And the people who were present there, they were looking down on Penelope, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that she couldn't find a husband. So it seems like that's the only thing they were focused on. And it sounds like even her mom made statements that she needed to just accept that she would never find a husband, and there was nothing wrong with that. So her mom was more upset that she asked for help from Colin, and the fact that people were now gossiping about it, than how that they were treating her.
Yeah. Her mom was more upset that Penelope was being talked about than the fact that people were talking about Penelope. Like, she wasn't mad on Penelope's behalf. She was mad at Penelope for being the object of gossip, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, Penelope was just living her life, and her failing to find a husband means that she never gets to break free from her family, and she continues to have to live in the environment that she was living. Having a husband meant freedom. She needed a husband in order to get away from that family, because in that period of time you didn't
leave your immediate family.
Yeah, you stayed with your family, or you went with your new spouse, and that was it.
Can you imagine never leaving, quote, home? You always had to live at home unless you got married. I mean, you think about society today, how that is. You could never get your own apartment, leave home. I mean,
own property or anything. Like, women have only been able to have credit cards since the late 70s.
gosh, we live in such a different time.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for freedom.
Right. But and that's why a lot of us symbolize, you know, like she would have to live at home. She would have like be limited on the things that she could do. Like as far as once she hit that point, she was never like because she was not marriageable anymore after a certain point.
So it makes this point even more crucial to her wanting to have a husband. So, I mean, we today take for granted that 18, we can go off to college, we can get a job, move forward. We don't have to depend on a marriage.
Yeah, like Penelope's only, what, 21?
Yeah. So,
Yeah, 21. She's in her third season, so she'd be 21. They come out at like 18.
yeah.
So, yeah, like, I mean, imagine that, thinking that if I'm 22, that I'm no longer marriageable. Like, that's insane.
It is insane. So, yeah.
Yeah. Like, very different from the way things are now.
Right. So,
So let's talk about the fallout of gossip. Penelope ended up isolating herself. Like, people are talking about her. They're saying bad things about her. She ends up getting from some guys that she was just trying to figure out how to talk to individuals of the opposite, you know, sex. Like, that's all she was trying to do. And that's what the advice she was getting from Colin, how to talk to boys.
yeah.
And
Social engagement.
yeah. Like, and I don't know about our listeners, but, you know, a lot of people struggle with that, talking to people, you know, in a romantic.
Having that social confidence to be able just to say, hi, how are you? My name's so-and-so.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's really where she struggled. She struggled with confidence in herself and her appearance, and she struggled with, you know, like all of this stuff.
And now she has this looming story behind her of, you just want to talk to me because you want a wife, or you want me to be your husband. So
yeah, you want to be you were manipulated. You're desperate. You know, like because yeah, and that's kind of the stuff they were saying to her. So she kind of starts isolating herself, and even before this, people had either just ignored her or been mean to her. So this just kind of was like, this is it, I'm done. And one girl, even at a party, stepped on her dress and ripped it because she was talking to somebody that she, you know, potential suitor that she might date. And so, like, people were just malicious to her just to be malicious.
Reminds me of the story of Cinderella too. Yeah.
And so now that the gossip spread everywhere, now everyone's involved, all the eyes are on her. Like, it even makes it into Lady Whistledown. Like, everybody's talking about it. And she's gone from being mostly invisible to being actively have everyone's attention, but in a negative way. Pretty similar to that story that I told you about the girl in my dorm.
Yeah.
She starts feeling anxious, she starts struggling with depression, and which are both side effects of being a victim of gossip.
Right. So, I mean, you know, it sounded like she did the best that she could with given the situation, and she just, from what I'm understanding, she continued to be herself. But she goes to the events and talks to people as she feels comfortable. But mostly she had to give herself some time and some space, didn't she?
Well, yeah. Like, before she was actively trying to find suitors, but at this point she's just kind of like, I'm going to step back. I'm going to go back to what I feel comfortable. I'm going to go back to being a wallflower. Like, I don't, you know, I put myself out there. I got burned. Like, I'm going to step back.
Right.
And so if you find yourself, some things you can do if you find yourself to be a victim of some gossip or bullying. Of course, there's always the Title IX stuff that you can do.
Right,
and
if our students are feeling like they're in the same similar situation.
The same similar situation.
Yeah.
And there's an online reporting system for that. Or you can go and talk to a staff member or faculty member about what you're feeling, and they can help you get the paperwork started. And there are a variety of steps that Title IX can take depending on the situation. And in addition, if you talk to a trusted staff or faculty member, it can also allow you to talk about your experiences, which can also help. We also have group and individual counseling on campus, which is covered by our activity fees. Now, staff and faculty members are going to be mandated reporters. So if it is something that files under Title IX, they're going to have to report it. But if it's something you want to kind of work through your feelings without having to have it reported, up in counseling, we are not required to do that. So we don't have to report Title IX stuff. Everything said in counseling is confidential. So you're allowed to come up there, work through your feelings, and then we can help you decide if you want to file the Title IX or not. And then if you do, walk you through that process if we need to.
And students can even file a UCare report on themselves. And then that way a case manager can reach out to you and help you and assist you with, filing the right paperwork and, going forward. Because sometimes it's hard, with just putting those things and verbalizing because you've been, when people have gossiped about you and you just feel like you're, beat down because of situations that are happening. Sometimes it's just you're emotionally overwhelmed. There's a lot of big emotions and it's hard to get all that down on paper. And so it's hard sometimes to make that first step. So if you're at home or in your own apartment or you're in your dorm room and you're just like, okay, it's easier for me to text and write all this out. You can call an RA or, a resident assistant and say, hey, can you help me with this? Or you can just pull up the UCare report and just type it all out yourself. A case manager will get back with you and say, hey, can you come in and meet with me? We can sit down and talk about this. And they'll help you right there. The case managers are in student well-being, so they can meet with you and talk to you about it as well. And then if they, at that point in time, you want to come meet with a counselor, you can do that as well. So, but otherwise, they can refer you over to Title IX at that point in time, too.
Yeah, and they can talk about whether this is something that fits under Title IX or something that doesn't.
Right. It's nice just to have that feedback from someone, but we don't want students just to feel like they're starting to get more depressed, they're getting isolated, they're starting to feel anxious, they're not attending class, they're withdrawing, they're feeling like they can't leave their room because they're feeling targeted. And we want you to know that there are support services on campus.
Absolutely.
It's very important.
And you can also disengage from the situation, which is what we saw Penelope do at first when she left the party. It's okay to step back and take some time if you're able to and if you want to. Sometimes we can't avoid bullies, but other times we can just exit the immediate situation and it resolves itself. Like sometimes they're just worked up and you just need to step back. Now, we don't want to limit our lives permanently, and we see Penelope going back to her normal routine very quickly, but sometimes just taking a step back, making sure that we feel safe in going places and being places that we feel safe, gives us a little bit of time to regroup so that we can go back later and approach that in a fresh way.
Right, and if it's during that time and you're taking that step back, you can boost your own self-esteem. You can work on some affirmations. You can reframe what's being said. Ask yourself if what was being said was about you or what was about them. Because sometimes what people are saying is actually about them. And so in Penelope's case, for example, she didn't do anything wrong. Her friend offered her help, and she accepted the help. Most of the people there were there for the same reason, to find a partner. And so they were there for a common shared reason. So their criticism or her actions were not about her, but they were based on their own fears of not being able to make a match as well. Right. So it was like everybody was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to find a match either. So
they call it the marriage mark for a reason. Like that was the term for it, is they called it the marriage mark because that's what people were doing. They were there to find partners.
Right.
What was she doing that was any different?
Nothing different. It was more of a competition.
Yeah. And that's what it became about, was like, oh, like, you look at her, like, I'm going to make her look bad.
Yeah, so it was all about them. So her greatest critic was even in exactly the same situation as she was, except for the part of asking for help. So. Yeah,
like, her greatest critic in the show was in her third season too. Like she was in the same boat where she was going to be, like her parents had told her that if she didn't make a match on her own that they were going to match her, and they had threatened to match her with a man that was old enough to be her grandfather.
Oh gosh.
And so and she was really not happy about that. And not only that, he was like extremely controlling and not a very nice guy. And so it was, and this person is the one who's making the biggest ruckus about Penelope.
Right. And in some cultures, arranged marriages are just, I mean, that's part of the culture and that's normal. And so we, that's okay. That's what the expectation is. So that's what people know. And that's the only thing that, that's how things work. In this particular situation, that wasn't the norm in that culture. So she wanted to go there with the expectation that she could find a mate, and that wasn't, she was being demeaned for trying to find, socially someone who she could match with.
Yeah.
And then it created this big storm. So,
it did. And that's a good point. There are a lot of social differences, and sometimes people don't understand the differences in social norms or different families and different ways that people do things. And so sometimes they pick up on stuff when it's just stuff that's normal for that particular family or the way that they do things.
Yeah.
We can also set some boundaries. This can mean ending friendships or relationships if those are the individuals that are causing you to feel bullied, or it can be placing limits on the time and attention you spend towards those relationships. We don't want to retaliate. It always thinks that we would feel better if we did, but it never does. The reason being, it's going to further escalate the situation. It's going to, we're going to not feel as good about it as we think we will. Right. We always think it's going to feel good, but it never does.
Right. And not in the situation of Bridgerton, but I think nowadays, in the case of online bullying, you can ignore or you can report. And so you don't want to engage, but the more you engage, the more they attack. And so they want a reaction. I think that's the thing that we have to deal with today. You can choose to ignore, or you can choose to block the account from viewing or interacting with you. And I think that's a piece that we have to pay attention to today, because there are people who do online bullying.
It's actually, it's like super, super, super common. Like people go online that their entire desire is to troll and say nasty things to people. They get online specifically to do that.
Yeah, so if you're a victim of that, if you've experienced that, that's one of those spaces that you know that how much power and control do you want to give to that person who is bullying you. And that's that space where you can say, I can block, I can take that power and control away from that person who's on the other side of the world, or who may be actually next door to me. Don't know who they are or where they are. But block, delete, remove the viewing, mute, whatever you have to do, but take that power and control away. Unfollow, yeah.
What's really, like, we've talked about this before as far as people want to keep you talking. So if they can say something that gets you aggravated and gets you to keep talking, that gives them more ammunition, and ultimately the goal is to keep you engaged. You can't win in those situations because no matter what you say, they're going to twist it around in a new way, and it just becomes like beating your head against a wall. It becomes about that disengaging when you realize that that's what somebody's doing, that they're not acting in good faith, that they're just fighting, bickering just to bicker. That's
we had foster children in our house, and so sometimes when the foster kids would start reuniting with their parents, there was always like this battle of trying to reunite, and there would be fights and conversations with parents when they were going back into the home. And one of the things I always used to say is, it's okay to leave people on red. And you don't have to answer right away. I said, because if you're emotional about the situation, I'm sure your parents are emotional about the situation too. So take a step back for a minute, leave it on red. And if you're okay to respond in an hour, or maybe it has to be overnight, then maybe logically you can respond. You're going to be thinking more clearer. I said, but if you're impulsive and you're just going to react out of anger, then you're just going to fuel the fire, and it's just going to keep, because if it was emotionally dysregulated conversation, you're going to say things that are hurtful, your parents going to say things that are hurtful, and it's just going to keep escalating the situation. And in situations like this, where there's so much power and control happening, you're just going to keep escalating the situation. So leave it on red, come back. I always say this when you're shopping too.
Put in the
shopping cart, leave it there. If you still want it the next day, maybe it's worth getting.
Fair. But, that's good financial advice.
Just leave it there. It's not worth it.
But you also have the choice whether to read it or not.
Right.
Like, if you're not in the headspace right now and somebody's saying stuff and they're being rude, they're being mean, and you're like, I don't have the space, you have the ability to set that boundary and say, like, I'm not even going to address this right now.
Right. You can leave it unread. Walk away.
So above all, let's remember that you don't deserve to be treated that way.
Right.
Nobody deserves to be bullied. Nobody deserves for malicious gossip. Nobody deserves, like, any of this. It's okay to need to talk about your experiences if it happens to you. It's okay to reach out and for support. Bullying, gossip are hard things to deal with, and they're not fair. They're not things that anybody should have to deal with.
And if you're experiencing that, that's why we're here. We have all kinds of supportive services on campus. Reach out to us. So student well-being, you can reach out to us on our website at studentwellbeing at mst.edu. You can reach out to your advisor. You can reach out to your athletic coach. You can reach out to Title IX. Boy, there's so many resources that you can reach out to here on this campus. The biggest thing that I would encourage you to do is just ask for help.
Right. And if you don't know where to start, you can call and schedule a screening, and we will help funnel you to the right area that you need to be in.
Yeah, and if you don't want to call, you can go to your student health portal, and you can schedule it yourself. And you can look through, you can go to our bios, and you can say, oh, Amber looks like somebody who I can connect with, or Lynn Davidson, or Lynn Wong, or Diane, or
Tracy.
Jean, or Tracy, or Bethany, or whomever you feel like you can connect with. You can look at those bios and you can say, hey, that's the person whom I can connect with.
Yeah.
And that person is right there. Elizabeth, also our intern. So we have lots of professional people that you can speak with, and we are here Monday through Friday from 8 to 5, willing to work with you and help you. So just reach out at your discretion.
So, thank you for joining us this week, minors. And don't engage in bullying and gossip.
And if you're a victim of it, please reach out for help.
Yep. And we will see you next week.
Take care. If you like this podcast, please remember to like and subscribe. To schedule an appointment or to reach out to us about future topics you would like to see, please email us at wellbeing@mst.edu. You can also reach us by phone at 573-341-4211. We are located at 204 Norwood Hall.
I accept the challenge.
Get out there and do your best!
Hey, go easy on yourself. Come on now.
Now you're talking!
For more mental health and well-being content, please follow us on Facebook at Missouri S&T Wellbeing and on Instagram at S&T Wellbeing.
But most importantly,
never give up.